Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Prabhupada Disciples Association regular Saturday morning Bhagavad-gītā class, being read from the unadulterated translation and purports by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda. And this program is part of our Prabhupada TV YouTube channel, and it is being broadcast as well on a live stream on Facebook and on YouTube, so that people around the world, and being recorded, as you know, so that people around the world can tune into the broadcast at their convenience in case their time zone doesn't permit their attendance on Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here in Canada and the US. The Bhagavad-gītā is understood by the devotee of Krishna. It is only through devotional service to Krishna and to the bona fide spiritual master that one can understand the true meaning of this reading. It is dependent on your commitment to this process. And by the grace of the Lord, one becomes enlightened through following this process of hearing, chanting, and taking prasadam. These are the three parts of devotional service that Prabhupada stressed to us. One is the offering of our food to Krishna before eating it. And we will discuss that at another time. Exactly the process for that for each of us. Most of you are aware anyway. And number two is the hearing of the scriptures, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and in this particular morning class today, it's the Bhagavad-gītā. And the last thing is the chanting of Hare Krishna. This process of chanting is key to one's development as a devotee of Krishna. It is only through devotional service that one can understand this process by the mercy of the Lord. I'm going to read a short passage from one of our God Brothers' books. It's called Miracle on Second Avenue. And the devotee that wrote this is a devotee called Mukunda Goswami. And I knew him. He came to Toronto on multiple occasions when we had different problems with interestingly enough, with our own God brothers. In other words, we had more trouble internally than externally from the people that were around us, even back then in the 70s. And in order to, minimize the impact in the media, Mukunda was involved in public relations. He came to help us. And we managed to, swim through the rough waters of internal struggle. So I'm going to read this small section for you, just so that you have an understanding about the importance of chanting your rounds, what it means. I guess so, Jagannath. They sure sound the same, Bob said. Does the truck look great? Shama Sundar asked. It really does, I said. Are you guys nearly done? Sure are, Bob said. Did the whole thing in less than 24 hours. I reported to the Swami, now Mukunda speaking to Prabhupada, about Bob and Shama Sundar's amazing efficiency the following day while we walked along Stinson Beach. So this is describing the building of the carts at the first Rath Yatra that was being held. So Prabhupada naturally was very, very excited that the movement was progressing in this way, to the point that now there was going to be a public display of Krishna consciousness in San Francisco with the building of this Rath Yatra cart and the procession that would follow. Mukunda says to Prabhupada, "It looks so great," I said to him. "They've made the canopy exactly to your drawing." So Prabhupada had sketched out the way he wanted the cart to look. "This is very nice," he replied. "Do you think you will feel well enough to come?" I ventured. So Mukunda speaking to Prabhupada here. "Actually, I'm thinking not," he said. He walked silently for a moment. "I will return to India soon." To India, this wasn't really a surprise, but I was disappointed nonetheless. Prabhupada says, "Yes," he said, "for Ayurvedic treatment and rest. Now I will go rest here. I will get strength for the journey, then I will go." "When?" Mukunda asked. "Perhaps at the end of July," he answered. "We will see what Krishna desires." We marched up the steps of the house and removed our shoes. I took the Swami's houndstooth coat and black hat and hung them on the row of coat hooks inside the front door. The Swami went into the den and sat down in one of the big armchairs. "Mukunda, come," he called. He gestured towards the chair opposite him. So he said a little playfully, "What is your definition of Krishna?" I was pleased, Mukunda said, because a philosophical discussion meant he was feeling somewhat better. "Krishna is God," I answered. "He is the supreme being, and our duty is to worship him." It wasn't exactly a philosophically penetrating answer, but he seemed happy with it. He looked hard at me for a long time. "Then," he said, "you must chant 64 rounds every day," he said finally. I was shocked. He must not have liked my answer, after all, chanting that much. 8 hours every day would be impossible, I thought. I wasn't sure if I was being singled out because of spiritual deficiency or if this was going to be a new requirement for everyone, but I knew it would be unattainable for me. I had enough problems just trying to get 16 rounds done every day. The Swami saw my hesitancy. Then he said, "You must chant at least 32 rounds, he said. That was a consolation. But even 32 seemed like an awful lot. The Swami stared hard at me. "Well, okay," I mumbled, looking at the floor. There was a long pause. "Prabhupada, you must chant at least 16 rounds a day," he said. "Yes, Swami," I said loudly. Looking up, I was so relieved. This I knew I could do, but I felt like I was reconfirming my earlier promise to him. I understand now that 16 rounds was only a quarter of the ideal 64. Even though I knew it was all I could handle for now, I dedicated myself to chanting at least 16 rounds daily without fail. So, very interesting pastime here on the chanting of the holy name and reaffirming that if one wants to understand the Bhagavad-gītā, he has to be a devotee of Krishna. And to be a devotee of Krishna, Prabhupada gave us this discipline of chanting minimum 16 rounds a day. This is not something I'm saying. This is something that Prabhupada instructed all of us to do, is to follow this process, beginning with the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra 16 rounds a day. If we do that as a group, the Prabhupada Disciples Association, with sincere commitment to this process, then, along with the other requirements that are necessary for spiritual life, we'll develop a very strong group. This group will not develop without people taking up the instructions of the spiritual master, as was explained in this pastime from Mukunda Das Goswami in Miracle on 2nd Avenue. So we're going to move forward now. We want to thank everybody for joining us here at the Prabhupada Disciples Association Saturday morning Bhagavad-gītā class. And we'll ask our Prabhu Vinkat to please play the Jaya Radha Madhava prayers, and then we'll hear the class presentation by Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Sai. Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari. Jaya Radha Punya Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra ki jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai, Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Sri Radha Krishna Gaur Gopinath Sam Kund Radha Kund Giridhardhan ki jai, Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadvip Dham ki jai, Swami Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Ganga Mai ki jai, Jamuna Mai ki jai, Tulasi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Swami Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. Thank you very much.
Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagar Jatam Sahaguna Raghunathan Anvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha E Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namah Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome everyone. We will be reading from Bhagavad-gītā As It Is. We are reading from the original 1972 Macmillan edition, the non-adulterated version. Today we are reading from chapter 7, text number 13. All synonyms, translations, and purports by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, Founder-Ācārya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, also known as the Krishna Consciousness Movement, page number 378. Tribhir gunamayer bhaver ibihi sarvamidam jagat mohitam nabijanati mamebhya paramavyayam. Tribihi, three. Gunamayayi, by the three gunas. Bhavayi, state of being. Ebihi, all this. Sarvam, the whole world. Idam, in this world. Jagat, universe. Mohitam, deluded. Na abhijanati, do not know. Mam, unto me. Ibhyaha, above these. Param, the supreme. Avyayam, inexhaustible. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance. The whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. Purport by His Divine Grace. The whole world is enchanted by the three modes of material nature. Those who are bewildered by these three modes cannot understand that transcendental to this material nature is the Supreme Lord Krishna. In this material world, everyone is under the influence of these three gunas and is thus bewildered. By nature, living entities have particular types of bodies and particular types of psychic and biological activities accordingly. There are four classes of men functioning in the three modes of nature. Those who are purely in the mode of goodness are called Brahmanas. Those who are purely in the mode of passion are called Kshatriyas. Those who are in the modes of both passion and ignorance are called Vaishyas. Those who are completely in ignorance are called Shudras. And those who are less than that are animals or animal life. However, these designations are not permanent. I may either be a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or whatever. In any case, this life is temporary. But although that life is temporary, and we do not know what we are going to be in the next life, still by the spell of this illusory energy, we consider ourselves in the light of this bodily conception of life. And we thus think that we are American, Indian, Russian, or Brahmana, Hindu, Muslim, etc. And if we become entangled with the modes of material nature, then we forget the Supreme Personality of Godhead who is behind all these modes. So Lord Krishna says that men deluded by these three modes of nature do not understand that behind the material nature, the material background, is the Supreme Godhead. There are many different kinds of living entities, human beings, demigods, animal, etc. And each and every one of them is under the influence of material nature. And all of them have forgotten the transcendent personality of Godhead. Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance, even those who are in the mode of goodness, cannot go beyond the impersonal Brahman conception of the absolute truth. They are bewildered before the Supreme Lord in his personal feature, which possesses all beauty, opulence, knowledge, strength, fame, and renunciation, when even those who are in goodness cannot understand what hope is there for those in passion and ignorance. Krishna consciousness is transcendental to all these three modes of material nature. And those who are truly established in Krishna consciousness are actually liberated. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, who has opened my eyes from the darkness of ignorance with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Presha Shunyavadi Paschatya Bhakti Siddhanta Shishyaya Bhaktivedanta Namine Prasannaya Prashantaya Ave Namaha Bhagavad Vandanam Kadya Guru Vandana Purvakam Kshikara Yuktam Kari Visheshataham Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrindam Sri Rup Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunatha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is a very important text from Bhagavad-gītā, where Krishna is explaining here, Mamibhya Paramavyayam, that I'm above the modes and inexhaustible. On the other hand, in the material world, the whole world is diluted by the influence of the material nature. Tribir Gunamayer Bhaver. We see in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining here, in the middle of the purport on page 379. However, these designations are not permanent. I may either be a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or whatever. In any case, this life is temporary. But although this life is temporary, and we do not know what we are going to be in the next life, still by the spell of this illusory energy, we consider ourselves in the light of this bodily conception of life. And we thus think that we are American, Indian, Russian, or Brahmana, Hindu, Muslim, etc. So this is a very important point. In Sanskrit, this is called upadi, or different designations. It is characteristic of a conditioned soul, one who is entangled in the modes of material nature, to think of themselves in terms of their physical material body. As Prabhupada describes here, Prabhupada says, we consider ourselves in the light of this bodily conception of life. Now, in order to come out of this temporary illusory idea and be situated properly as eternal servant of God or Krishna, one has to clear out these various upadis or artificial designations. We see in the Narada Pancharatra, Narada Muni, the great celestial sage, describes what is devotion. Is sarvopadi vinirmuktam tat paratpira nirmanam rishikesha rishikena bhaktir uchyate. That devotion or devotional service to God means sarva upadi vinirmuktam, to become free from all of these artificial temporary designations. Tat paratpira nirmalam. Nirmalam means pure, purified. One has to become purified of this contamination material contamination. Now, Prabhupada has very nicely described here what are these designations and why we're being affected. This is because of the false identification with the modes of nature in various positions. Srila Prabhupada also says in the second paragraph, there are many different kinds of living entities, human beings, demigods, animals, etc. And each and every one of them is under the influence of material nature. And all of them have forgotten the transcendent personality of Godhead. So this is the reason that everybody is under the influence of these modes of nature, the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of ignorance. Bhagavad-gītā gives very accurate, detailed description of the characteristics of each one of these modes, specifically in the terms of what food one eats, what activities one conducts, what is the result of affiliating with a certain mode of nature. In the Bhagavad-gītā itself, there are various descriptions in different chapters, in the later chapters, of the influence of these various modes. In the 18th chapter of Bhagavad-gītā, text number 71, Krishna explains, and Krishna's pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada, one who listens with faith and without envy becomes free from sinful reaction and attains to the planets where the pious dwell. Prabhupada explains here, in other words, Bhagavad-gītā is for the devotees only. But it so happens that sometimes a devotee of the Lord will hold open class. And in that class, all the students are not expected to be devotees. Why do such persons hold open class? It is explained here that although everyone is not a devotee, still there are many men who are not envious of Krishna. They have faith in him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If such persons hear from a bona fide devotee about the Lord, the result is that they become at once freed from all sinful reactions, and after that attain to the planetary system where all righteous persons are situated. Therefore, simply by hearing Bhagavad-gītā, even a person who does not try to be a pure devotee attains the result of righteous activities. Thus, a pure devotee of the Lord gives everyone a chance to become free from all sinful reactions and to become a devotee of the Lord. Generally, those who are free from sinful reaction are righteous. Such persons very easily take to Krishna consciousness. The word punya karmanam is very significant here. This refers to the performance of great sacrifice. Those who are righteous in performing devotional service, but who are not pure, can attain the planetary system of the pole star or Dhruva Loka, where Dhruva Maharaja is presiding. He's a great devotee of the Lord, and he has a special planet which is called the pole star. So now we see here the benefit of hearing the Bhagavad-gītā and the different scriptures. Because the question is raised, well, why do you hold these classes? What is the benefit of having these classes? And this is nicely explained in this text, chapter 18, text 71, that the benefit of hearing the message of the Godhead, Krishna, from the pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, is one gradually becomes free from all sinful reactions due to the influence of the mode of material nature. And here Srila Prabhupada is also describing, somebody will also raise the issue, well, what will be the the benefit after this life of hearing Bhagavad-gītā. And Prabhupada said one can become purified and become elevated to a very auspicious planet like the pole star or Dhruvaloka. According to the Srimad Bhagavatam, that planet, Dhruvaloka, does not become destroyed at the annihilation of the material world. It remains, it is a transcendental planet within this universe. It does not become destroyed. And in that planet, there are highly elevated, great sages, great devotees situated in a mode of goodness. And from there, one can gradually go to Vaikuntha and Goloka. So this is one of the ways to transcend the influence of the modes of nature. We see when we read a Bhagavad-gītā, and we see so many different ways that Krishna explained how to transcend these modes of material nature. For example, here is another reference. In Bhagavad-gītā, chapter 14, text number 20, 1420 on page 684, Krishna describes Gunan etana trityatrin dehi deha samudbhavan janma mrityu jara dukker vimukto mritamasnuti. Srila Prabhupada translates, when the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, how one can stay in the transcendental position, even in this body, in full Krishna consciousness is explained in this verse. The Sanskrit word dehi means embodied. Although one is within this material body, by the advancement in spiritual knowledge, he can be free from the influence of the modes of nature. He can enjoy the happiness of spiritual life even in this body, because after leaving this body, he is certainly going to the spiritual sky. But even in this body, he can enjoy spiritual happiness. In other words, devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the sign of liberation from this material entanglement. And this will be explained in the 18th chapter. When one is freed from the influence of the modes of material nature, he enters into devotional service. So we see that there are so many references in Srila Prabhupada's explanation and purpose how to become free from the influence of modes of material nature. As Vishwakarma Prabhu explained in the beginning, Srila Prabhupada in the beginning was trying to introduce the chanting of 64 rounds a day of japa, because his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, used to have a policy that every student in his mission should chant 64 rounds a day. When Prabhupada came to America, started his preaching, he very quickly realized that most Americans, most devotees, could not chant 64 rounds a day for various reasons. So first he tried to give 32 rounds a day. That was also difficult. Then he gave the actual minimum of 16 rounds a day. There's a very interesting story from a devotee named Jai Gauranga Das. He's a devotee in Los Angeles. He related a story one time. Our Srila Prabhupada in Mexico had given an initiation ceremony and giving initiation to several students. Afterwards, he was in his room and he took his bead bag like that and he dropped it on the table. And Jai Gauranga said that Prabhupada says, if you chant your 16 rounds, don't think that now I can go out and do all nonsense, that everything is finished. No, you have to engage in some practical service. Now, somebody may say, well, that may have been applicable when all the devotees were living physically in the temples. Because at that point in time, during Prabhupada's manifested presence, Devotees were engaged, going on Sankirtan, doing so many activities, working together, serving together. Now, so many devotees have wife, family, friends, jobs, so many activities. So how to stay engaged? And this is how one can use the benefit of modern technology to keep hearing about Krishna. I heard a devotee one time protesting that because many of these cell phones are made in China or other countries, one should not be so much reliant on cell phones. That is true. But at the same time, one can use this modern technology to our advantage, to hear Prabhupada chanting, to hear Prabhupada speaking on Bhagavad-gītā and Srimad Bhagavatam during different lectures, so many different songs and bhajans from Srila Prabhupada. There are numerous ways of staying connected with Krishna. It is not that difficult. Simply one has to concentrate and learn to redirect the desire so that our desire becomes intense to hear about Krishna, to serve Krishna by chanting, by hearing, and eventually, as Prabhupada said, one can become liberated. So this is the process given by His Divine Grace. It is not complicated. It is not difficult. It is actually simple. Prabhupada explains in the third canto of the Bhagavatam that sometimes persons will object that how can I engage and be connected to spiritual life? And Prabhupada said it is not that one has to engage physically, have to associate physically, but by logic and philosophy, by hearing the message of a liberated soul like Srila Prabhupada. Satan prasangan mama virya sambido. From Srimad Bhagavatam, it is recommended that one should associate with devotees. So one can associate with the ultimate devotee, with the purest of devotee, who is always available. Always available. Simply one has to be willing to hear, to give some oral reception. Vishwakarma Prabhu, perhaps you'd like to comment on this.
Yes, thank you very much, Yaśodā, for an enlightening class for the Association of the Prabhupada Disciples. I wanted to ask Vincott to refer back to the purport, page 379 at the top. There are 4 classes of men functioning in the 3 modes of material nature. Those who are purely in the mode of goodness are called Brahmins. Those who are purely in the mode of passion are called Kshatriyas. Those who are in the modes of both passion and ignorance are called Vaishyas. And those who are completely in ignorance are called Sudras. And those who are less than that are animals or animal life. However, these designations are not permanent. I may either be a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or whatever. In any case, this life is temporary. But although life is temporary and we do not know what is going to be in the next life, still by the spell of this illusory energy, we consider ourselves in the light of this bodily conception of life, and we thus think that we are American, Indian, Russian, Brahmin, Hindu, Muslim, etc. So this is the result of being under the comatose condition of the influence of the modes of material nature. Please go to Madhya Lila 13, text 76. And we're going to read through a few sections of this to get a clarification on this matter from the Supreme Lord himself, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Offering obeisances to the Lord, with folded hands, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu raised his face toward Jagannath and prayed as follows. So Lord, this particular chapter is the Lord dancing at Rath Yatra. So in the middle of the procession, the Lord raised his face toward Jagannath and prayed as follows. Text 77. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto Lord Krishna, who is the worshipful deity for all Brahminical men, who is the well-wisher of cows and Brahmins, and who is always benefiting the whole world. I offer my respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead known as Krishna and Govinda. Text 78. All glories unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as the Son of Devaki. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as the Light of the Dynasty of Vrishni. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose bodily luster is like that of a new cloud, and whose body is as soft as a lotus flower. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appeared on this planet to deliver the world from the burden of demons, and who can offer liberation to everyone. Text 79. Lord Sri Krishna is he who is known as Jana Nivasa, the ultimate resort of all living entities, and who is also known as Devaki Nandana or Yaśodā-nandana, the son of Devaki and Yaśoda. He is the guide of the Yadu dynasty, and with his mighty arms he kills everything inauspicious, as well as every man who is impious. By his presence, he destroys all things inauspicious for all living entities moving and inert. His blissful, smiling face always increases the lusty desires of the gopis of Vrindavan. May he be all glorious and happy. So please note, these are prayers by Lord Chaitanya. Now, this is coming to the issue, text 80. And the last part of the text, Gopi Bhartu Pada Kamalayor Dasa Dasa Anu Dasa. Gopi Bhartu Pada Kamalayor Dasa Dasa Anu Dasa. And I know all of you are aware of this verse, and I'll read it. Now this is, everybody be conscious of this. This is Lord Chaitanya speaking to us. I am not a Brahmin. I am not a Kshatriya. I am not a Vaishya or a Sudra, nor am I a Brahmachari, a householder, a Vanaprastha, or a sannyasi. I identify myself only as the servant of the servant of the servant of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, the maintainer of the gopis. He is like an ocean of nectar, and he is the cause of universal transcendental bliss. He is always existing with brilliance. So this is the essence of our philosophy, period. There is no greater understanding of Krishna consciousness than what is being described by Lord Chaitanya. And briefly, before we continue with our comments, I wanted to tell, when I got initiated, some of you may have heard the story before, but it's still ever fresh for me. I got initiated in 1971 in Detroit, Michigan by Srila Prabhupada. So the temple room was packed with devotees. People had come from, it was just a living room in Jefferson Street Temple. It was prior to the opening of the Fisher Mansion. So the room was absolutely packed with devotees. You couldn't move. Everybody was jammed in. People came from Chicago. They came from New York. They came from New Vrindavan. They came from Canada, from Hamilton. We were from Hamilton at the time, and we were, and there were the Toronto devotees came down. So it was like that. Back then, everybody was working together. It was a cooperative movement where everybody came together as a giant family, not like the way it is today, where everybody is sectarian in their approach to Krishna consciousness. So at any rate, Prabhupada was calling out the devotees to come up and get their chanting beads and get their spiritual name from him. And I'm sitting there in this packed quarters, a young man, 23 years old. And then they called out my name, Bobby Hebert. I was like, oh, my heart was beating so fast. I was so nervous. I hardly knew the philosophy. I had been in the temple for 6 months. So, somehow or other, everybody was being recruited that could come in and do some service and be sincere at a certain level. We only had one book, the Bhagavad-gītā, the blue one, and then that was pretty much it, and a couple of small books. So hardly any of us knew much more than just the Gita. I'd never heard the name Vishvakarma in my life. I had no idea what it meant. So I crawled over the devotees. That's what you had to get, to stumble over the devotees to get to the front. Prabhupada had a big Vyasa-san beside Lord Jagannath. So the temple, there was a Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra, and then Prabhupada was on the left side. So you got to see this. Imagine it. Incense was burning like crazy, so the whole atmosphere was just permeated with this smoke from the incense. And I got up to the front. I got down and paid my obeisances in front of Prabhupada. And so nervous, I didn't know what was going on, really. I was just so affected by the atmosphere. And, this fellow from Hamilton, Steeltown. Anyway, Prabhupada asked me, what are the 4 regulated principles? And I looked at him, I said, no intoxication and no illicit sex life. He goes, that's enough. He didn't even let me finish the other 2 principles. And then he said, your name, he gave me the beads, handed me the beads, and he said, your name is Vishvakarma Das. Oh. Like it took me 2 days to find out what the name was. After the program was over, I had to ask people, what does that name mean? So Prabhupada looked at me, and there was a big roar of approval. There was like a couple hundred devotees there. Oh, Vishvakarma Das. And Prabhupada looked at me. He goes, yes, but you should never think that you are the chief engineer. I was like, oh. So I thought, oh, gee. Again, I didn't know what it meant anyway. And then he said, but you should always remember that you are the servant of the servant of the servant of the chief engineer. And in this way, you become great. So subsequently, I finally found out that it was Vishvakarma was in charge of creating the universe he was the chief engineer for Lord Brahma. So this message that Prabhupada gave me at the beginning of my spiritual life when I was initiated, that means allowed to begin the process. Initiation means you begin Krishna consciousness. That I was blessed with this opportunity to become the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna, of Lord Chaitanya, of Srila Prabhupada. And this is exactly the message that was given by Lord Chaitanya to all of humanity. The more you become a servant of Krishna, the more you serve the devotees of Krishna, The more you serve the pure devotee of Krishna, the greater you'll become. Hare Krishna. Yaśodā-nandana, please, if you could comment.
Point. Because we often see in spiritual life that some devotees who are doing nicely for some time, following the principles, chanting, doing nice service, that at some point there's some major problems that they experience. And a lot of it has to do with going back and again associating with the modes of nature, specifically the mode of passion and ignorance. For example, in the Bhagavad-gītā, it describes various kinds of speech. There is speech in the mode of goodness, there is speech in the mode of passion, and there's also speech in the mode of ignorance. And as devotees, we're expected to conduct ourselves in a certain way, in a civilized, Brahminical way. But sometimes, under the influence of the mode of passion, some devotees forget that. So that's why we have these instructions of the great acharyas and our Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This particular verse is a very important verse from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as quoted by Rupa Goswami in the Padyavali and Krishnadas Kaviraj in his Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. I had the chance in 1973 when Guru Kripa and myself met Srila Prabhupada in Los Angeles, and there had been some concern that had been brought to Srila Prabhupada about some of the Sankirtan techniques for collecting money. At that point, we were collecting funds for the construction of the Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan, India. So there had been some complaints that these two devotees, these two upstarts, Guru Kripa and Yasodanandan, had gone in somebody's zones and did not give the money to the local GBC and local temple presidents. So when we first saw Prabhupada, Prabhupada said, "Oh, I've heard a lot about you two. They've all come to complain about you, that you went in their zones and did not give them the money." And Prabhupada was not very happy. He says, "I'm trying to build a temple in Vrindavan." Says they have some money, they can give something, but they're not giving. And then Prabhupada complained about one devotee who was trying to control so many other devotees. And Prabhupada said, that is not the Vaishnava mentality. Prabhupada said, Vaishnava mentality means, and he quoted that verse that Vishwakarma Prabhu pointed out in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Gopi Bhartuhu Padakamalayur Dasa Dasa Anudasa. And then Prabhupada put his finger in the air and says, that is Vaishnava, not this mentality that I'm number one and everybody should serve me. That is not Vaishnava. So we have to learn from these verses. There are some very important fundamental instructions. And if somebody forgets this, then the mode of passion, the mode of ignorance, there is abuse, there's misrepresentation, personal attacks, falsehoods, fabrications, distortions. We don't need this. As Vaishnavas, there's a certain code of behavior. There's a certain expectation that a devotee or aspiring devotee, in my case, I'm just an aspiring servant, not even a devotee, but there's a certain expectation that we should behave in a certain way, not with false accusations, fabricating things, inventing things, twisting things to one's advantage. No, this is not the behavior of a Vaishnava. That's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we have to remember, we're not Brahmins, we're not Kshatriyas, we're not Vaishyas, not Shudras, we're not Brahmacharis, Grihasthas, we are eternal servant of Krishna. You look at the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the example that is given by Krishnadas Kaviraj, he describes himself as lower than the worm in the stool. But when we understand Krishnadas Kaviraj's position in our Sampradaya, he's one of the highest acharyas. He's written the most authoritative literature on the life and activities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was an exalted soul, a confidential servant of Lord Nityananda Prabhu. The 6 Goswamis requested him to write this book, but yet he's describing himself that if somebody hears my name, they'll lose all their pious activities. So many humble descriptions. For example, look at the life of Bhaktivedanta Thakur and the way he describes himself in that song Gopinath. He describes himself just like an ordinary fallen soul. He's not puffed up. He's not arrogant. He was a highly elevated soul. According to our Sampradaya, he's considered to be a reincarnation of Swarup Damodar Goswami. He is a confidential associate of Lord Chaitanya who came back to establish Krishna consciousness, but yet he presents himself, I'm just a fallen conditioned soul. Just see the humility. Amazing humility. Just like we know King Kulashekar. King Kulashekar is the author of a book called Mukunda Malastotra. In that book, he has a nice description. He says, Masjanmana palamidam madukayata bari mat prarataniya madanugraha esha eva. That my dear Lord, O killer of the demon Madhu and Kaitava, O Lord of the universe, I submit one humble request before you, a humble prayer. What is that? Setvat britya britya paricharaka brityasya britya britya iti mam smaralokanata. That I want to become the servant of the servant of the servant. He repeats it 7 times. Just see the exalted position of these great souls. They are the most confidential associates of Krishna, the most purified souls. And for our benefit, they're giving out these very sweet instruction of how we should think, how we should act, how we should behave. So these are very important instructions for all of us. Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol.
Mataji on the Bahia, were you trying to raise your hand? Did you have a question or comment? Nothing yet? Okay. Anybody else has a comment?
Yeah, I'd like to invite our godbrother. We have a godbrother in our group, Radha Madhava, and he is a former student in the Gurukula in Mayapur back in the 70s. And Radha Madhava, he lives in Toronto, and he's a friend of ours. And his name was given by Prabhupada to him to be named after Radha Madhava in Mayapur at the temple there. So he has quite a history. Radha Madhava, are you able to speak on the microphone? Radha Madhava? I hope he can. I guess he's not available, but I see he's attending the class. Bala Ganesh Prabhu. Oh, I got the answer. No, he can't. I apologize for that. Bala Ganesh Prabhu, you have a question.
Can you hear me clearly, Prabhu?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Prabhu. Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Prabhu. Prabhuji, these 3 modes of material nature we were discussing. So it was told that whatever is there in the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. So what are the purest form of this ignorance, mode of ignorance and mode of passion in spiritual world, Prabhu?
Okay, could you reiterate that, please?
Sorry.
You have to speak closer to the...
Slowly and clearly. Slowly and clearly.
Okay, Prabhuji, okay. So whatever is there in material world is actually a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So what is the original counterparts of this mode of passion and mode of ignorance? What are the original things that were perverted as 3 modes here?
Yaśodā Prabhu, would you like to respond to that?
I have a hard time understanding his question. Can somebody maybe rephrase the question for me?
Yes, I can. He's saying that the material world is diametrically opposite to the spiritual world. In other words, its reality exists because there is a reality in the spiritual world, like the reflection of a tree into the water. So it exists because it exists in the spiritual world. He's asking, what is the opposite reflection of the three modes of material nature in the spiritual world?
There is no influence of the modes of nature in the spiritual world. That is the major difference. That in the spiritual world, there is no, that's why it is called Vaikuntha. In Sanskrit, kunta means anxiety, difficulty. Vaikuntha means no difficulty, no anxiety, no suffering, no birth, no death, no old age, no disease, no influence of the modes of material nature. That is the meaning of the spiritual world. Yes, Ronald Singh Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare
Please go
Krishna.
ahead.
Yes,
Haribol.
Prabhu. We see when Srila Prabhupada made various commentaries, not commentaries, very comments on, for example, you quoted that quote. What was it? Vishwakarma about Gopi, the servant of the servant of the servant of the Gopis. And then Srila Prabhupada also used this very famous quote, the Brahma Bhuta Prasanta Atma quote, na sochati na kanchati. That many times he said that devotional service actually starts from that platform or that level. So we as neophytes are trying to attain that stage. So how does that correlate between that Brahma Bhuta stage and our neophyte stage? Is there a connection?
Well,
Yaśodā,
the connection
please.
is, if you look at that verse, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, Naso Chati Nakangshati.
Yes.
There's two basic fundamental principles. To constantly hanker for material enjoyment. When one's hankering for material enjoyment doesn't work, then there is lamentation, sochati. So when one is beyond these stages of lamentation and hankering, then Brahmabhuta Prasanatma Nasochati Sashangshati. Then the bhakti, Mad Bhaktim Labati Param. Then the bhakti begins at that point where the influence of the mode of passion and the mode of nurturing subsides and one is situated in a mode of goodness, then the bhakti will begin. Otherwise, it's very difficult to make progress in the path of bhakti if one constantly engages on the level of this lamentation and hankering. That's why some of you look at the various regulative principles that have been given. There are different restrictions. For example, there's a lecture Prabhupada says, basically, the more restrictions you accept, the more advanced you become. And the less restrictions you accept, the more animalistic you become. So in other words, it's up to us to make that decision to follow the instruction and the path given by the acharyas. Then the Brahma Bhuta platform can come, the influence of modes of natural nature can recede. And this is explained in so many different purports by Srila Prabhupada. And this is achieved by getting the mercy of the pure devotee. Hare Krishna.
Right. Thank you very much. That's very clear.
Hare Krishna.
Further, we wanted to, Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu was quoting the system of liberation by Prabhupada is called the Jiva Mukta. Jiva Mukta means, as we all know, the liberation while you're within the confines of the material body. And that is possible by full engagement in devotional service. In other words, all the senses that we have, the city of nine gates, we're taking it and engaging it in the service of Krishna. And Prabhupada says, I was listening to a lecture earlier this morning before the class. He said Krishna consciousness is very easy. The example he gave is it's simple for the simple and difficult for the crooked. Simple for the simple, difficult for the crooked. And so what is the process? The process is to offer food to Krishna and eat that as prasadam. We have to eat every day. So the learning how to prepare food and offer it to Krishna and eat it yourself, honor it. Actually, it's honoring prasadam. And at the same time, sharing prasadam with others is critical to controlling the tongue. If you can't control your tongue, you cannot control the other senses. This is the essence of this yoga process. And along with controlling the tongue through the honoring of prasadam, we have to chant Hare Krishna mantra. And Prabhupada has given us this recommended process of 16 rounds a day. This is a discipline that we have to follow. And then furthermore, Prabhupada explained, listen to the philosophy of the Gita Upanishad. He said it's an Upanishad. You study the Gita in association with other like-minded devotees. This is critical to making advancement in Krishna consciousness. And you have to pick in your life, you have to pick the people you want to associate with. You have to qualify them. Prabhupada said in the lecture, it's not difficult to qualify somebody. You can qualify them. You can judge them easily by how they speak, how they represent themselves, what their motives are. And then you can go into the marketplace and study the different people that are presenting Krishna, Prabhupada and his disciples, and decide for yourself who you want to associate with, because association is critical. Devotee association cannot be minimized. It's part of the process. Guru, Shastra, Sadhu. The sadhus that we're speaking about are the people that are devoted solely and wholly to Srila Prabhupada without profit, adoration, and distinction. They have no interest in personal self-aggrandizement. They have only one interest, to try to become like Jayananda was. The great devotee of Prabhupada's, Jayananda, I had fortunate to associate with him prior to his passing when we were doing the Rath Yatra program in Toronto to spread across Canada, North America, the traveling Rath Yatra. He was advising us, but he was known to be the servant of the servant of the servant of the spiritual master. That was his position. He served everyone. And so that is the example. Yaśodā, please, if you could comment.
That's a very good example. Jayananda was quite an exalted devotee. An exalted devotee because of his unique service attitude, completely selfless, completely focused on Srila Prabhupada. In 1976 at Mayapur, I had a conversation with Jayananda, and I asked him, well, why don't you take sannyas? He says, oh, no, I can't do that. I says, well, why can't you do that? You're very renounced and very austere. You're a very exemplary devotee. He says, oh, that would be a great disgrace to the Vedic culture. That's why I can't take sannyas. He had this amazing humility. He was never arrogant. He was never puffed up thinking, I'm a big devotee, I'm a scholarly devotee, I'm a very learned devotee, I'm a popular devotee. None of this. His whole attitude was simply complete service. He was very famous as the first devotee who started the Rath Yatra festival in 1967 in San Francisco. He did many of the other Rath Yatras. In 1977 in May, after Srila Prabhupada heard that Jayananda had departed his body, he was in his room in Vrindavan at the Krishna Balaram temple. And Dr. O.B.L. Kapoor, a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was there with him. And Prabhupada had just heard that Jayananda had departed. So he was having a discussion in Hindi and English with his godbrother, O.B.L. Kapoor. And he told O.B.L. Kapoor that at the time of death, he was listening to the Maha Mantra. And Prabhupada said he went back to Godhead, and Srila Prabhupada started to cry. He became so emotional. And he quoted that verse from Bhagavad-gītā that we've discussed previously, chapter 4, text 9, Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tatvataha tyaktva deha punara janma naiti mamiti so Arjuna. Prabhupada said he went back to Godhead. So that was a very, very special moment to hear His Divine Grace confirm that Jayananda went back to Godhead. Prabhupada also said that his photo should be put on all the Rath Yatra cart. His disappearance day, which is one day before the appearance of Lord Nrsimhadev every year, should be observed by all the devotees. He was quite a unique, great saintly personality. And it was our good fortune that such an exalted soul was acting just like a regular devotee, but he was not just a regular devotee. He was a liberated soul who is completely engaged, mind, body, and soul, completely engaged 24 hours a day with no false ego, no anger, no mode of passion, no mode of ignorance. Very special soul. Hare Krishna.
If you could give us a comment.
Sorry, you were muted. We missed the first part of your sentence.
Vijay Pandit, please, in Italy, if you could make a comment, we would appreciate it. Can you put the microphone on? Yes, please comment, sir. Prabhu.
You hear? Well, not so easy to comment, because after I hear all the comments Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu made and you made, I can only go on to listen to all of you. What I have to say, I have to learn how to listen first. Then maybe I can say something. But it's amazing how the people can say that because they are going on to say, Srila Prabhupada, did he make pure devotees? They are saying he made a lot of pure devotees, they say. For sure there are many pure devotees with us. But they are humble. They are not coming out like pop stars. They are somewhere in the house doing service in a humble way. So all of you are pure devotees for me. All of you.
Thank you, Prabhu, very much for your comments. We would want to mention that Vijaya Pandit is pushing on with Krishna Consciousness in Italy. This is a global group that we have assembled here with the hope to share association and Prabhupada consciousness. We had a criticism recently that someone was saying, well, all they do is talk about Srila Prabhupada. All they do is quote him. This is the fault that they saw in us. This is, of course, unfortunate for that person, because really the job of the devotee, the Prabhupada disciple, either an aspiring disciple or initiated disciple, is to simply remember the words of his spiritual master. That is it. And try to repeat them as accurately as possible. And in this way, the Krishna Consciousness movement can be spread all around the world. And this is the goal of the Prabhupada Disciples Association, is to continue the legacy of Srila Prabhupada without any adulteration. This is going on nowadays. Recently, I've been seeing, and I know all of you or many of you are on the social media, you're seeing different people, God brothers, they're giving these motivational speeches. Like, for example, I'll paraphrase it, but, oh, when you get up in the morning, tell yourself you're going to have a good day. And then keep that positive affirmation with you all day. And at the end of the night, you'll be able to say, I had a great day. This is the preaching that goes on in the form of Krishna consciousness in the modern post-Prabhupada books era. Post-Prabhupada books era. This is complete nonsense. For example, now they're saying that Prabhupada books are Ritvik books. The original books are Ritvik books. This is blasphemy. This is heresy. This is nonsense. And someone would say, well, you have no right to say that. Yes, we do. And the fact of the matter is, if people can't understand with what we're telling them, that's their problem, not ours. Prabhupada's books should have never been changed. And so many other things that are being changed are also according to the mental speculation of people. Yaśodā-nandana, please, if you could comment further.
Yes, that's a very interesting point here. When I was in South India preaching with Achyutananda, we went to Udupi. And we were invited by one of the swamis of one of the mutts to his village. And he had arranged a very elaborate feast, Vaishnava preparations. And they have these very old deities they've been worshiping for 900 years. This was called the Admar Mutt. This Swami was a great scholar, very learned, very sober person. He was very appreciative, especially of Achyutananda Swami's bhajans. So he requested Achyutananda Swami to sing some of his bhajans. And although he did not know Bengali, because Bengali is very close to Sanskrit, he was very appreciative of the songs. So at some point, he made a mention that in their sampradaya, they constantly pray to their acharya, says, Acharya Srimad Acharyaha, Santume Janma Janmani, that birth after birth, I pray that I will remain a servant of our Acharya, Madhvacharya. So this is a very important mindset. Just like the other day, I was explaining how Raghunath Das Goswami was praying to Rupa Goswami that with a clump of grass in my mouth, I bow down at the lotus feet of Rupa Goswami. Adadana strinam danter idam yachi punapuna. Punapuna means again and again, I bow down. What is that? Srimad Rupa Padam Bhoja Dhulishyam Janma Janmani. That I can become a piece of dust at the lotus feet of Rupa Goswami, birth after birth. This is the mentality that we have to adopt. In our case, we pray that we simply become the servant of Srila Prabhupada. So if somebody criticizes us that you people are departing from the text and are just talking about Prabhupada, well, let this be birth after birth, our only engagement, to glorify the pure devotee, to hear from the pure devotee, and present his teachings to other persons. Respectfully submitted. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu, very much. We're moving to the end of the discussion today, and we wanted to thank all of the people that have come online live with us with the Prabhupada Disciples Association live stream and with the recording of the class. So if you miss any of the sections of this class, please, you can go to YouTube, Prabhupada TV, and you'll find the classes all nicely presented there for your listening pleasure. and we're moving forward with multiple programs to bring about a more comprehensive understanding of the philosophy for all the devotees of Prabhupada who want to get a deeper appreciation of his teachings and his philosophy of Krishna consciousness, his guidance through the Sadhu Sangha, the association of devotees. This is very valuable, and everyone should please remember this is not forever. This comes and we all come and we go in due course of time. And it's by the grace of our group that we're recording these for future reference for new people that are going to come, so that Prabhupada's legacy can be continued on into the future with this focus. Everyone must come, everyone must go. But Prabhupada's words and the words of his disciples that are committed to him will live on to save humanity from the despicable condition that it's falling into. So thank you, everyone. Don't forget, tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll be back online with the Srimad Bhagavatam class. By the way, it's a wonderful segment, the Srimad Bhagavatam class we're in right now. We're in the first canto, first chapter. It's extraordinarily interesting and enlivening. So don't miss it. You're missing something which you can't capture any other way. And we'll carry on with the Krishna Consciousness Sankirtan mission, all of us together under the banner of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Venkat, Bhakti Venkat, could you please bring up the kirtan? And everyone chant along. Please chant along when it's time to chant. Move your lips and listen to the name and go back home, back to Godhead. Hari Bol.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare
Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna.
Jai Prabhus, let us offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Vanchakalpa, Trubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu, Bhaivacha, Patitanam, Pavanibhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. Aprakrita ki Jai, Hari Hari Bol.
Chant Hare Krishna, Vishwakarma. Sois heureux. All right, Hare Krishna.